All right, folks. Well, we had a small group call tonight, so most of it was unrecorded. But I was just telling people that I want to keep our streak going. We've recorded something every week for this SP Mastermind, so we want to keep the streak going. Marvin mentioned it a week or two ago, I think at the beginning of December, about how goal setting can be very helpful, both for relationship goals and just personal self-concept goals. And that starting in December for the upcoming year, in this case 2025, can be very helpful. We all know the stories of people set goals and then they or intentions, resolutions, and then they fall off the wagon a week or two later. Everybody joins the gym, and then 2 weeks later they actually aren't going to the gym. We don't want that to happen to you, to state the obvious. And I guess what I just wanted to mention today, and then I'll let Marv talk about it and we can open the floor if we want to have any other discussion about it, is we've mentioned it before, but I do think it's worthwhile for most people in this group and people watching this recording in the future to occasionally, and again, this is the perfect time if you're watching this soon after it's recorded, beginning of the year of 2025, to set at least a quarterly, a 3-month goal, if not a 6 to 12-month goal, right? And honestly, I don't care how specific you get, right? Your 3-month goal or your 12-month goal could just be, I want to improve my self-concept and my self-love towards myself. If that is just your goal and you're serious about it, that's enough, in my opinion. Or you can get super serious. You can say, I want to be 12 months from now, I want to be in a relationship and be living with my person. And you can add other features to that. I want to, you can say, I want this to be my job. I want this to be my ideal weight, blah, 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 blah. You can get specific as you want. The point is just to be honest with yourself. I don't think most people take goal setting seriously. And again, I'm not the biggest goal setter myself, but I do think there are times where, to hold ourselves accountable, we do want to set goals. And I can tell you right now, in regards to this SP stuff, if you haven't reached out to your SP and you feel like you should be doing it sometime, I would set a goal. Like, I have spoken to my SP, or at least reached out eloquently to my SP by so-and-so date. And I would go so far as to say that everybody watching this, if that's an issue for you, should have that so-and-so date no more than 90 days from now. And then keep your word to yourself about that. Do that within 90 days. I have seen very few examples of people having good reasons not to reach out to their SP if there's communication issues, waiting longer than 3 months to do it. For almost everybody I've seen, they should be able to do it within 6 to 8 weeks, the latest. And if you're like me, I mean, you guys know me, I would say do it within the next 2 weeks. Once you feel somewhat clear, just do it. But that's an extreme. But seriously, within 3 months, yeah. And something else, I've just noticed in the group is, like, set that date and then forget it. And a good intention could be like, within 3 months, I will have communicated my feelings to my SP and gotten a response one way or the other, or not. If I have not gotten a response, I make the resolution to move on with my life and to clear up, that energy, work through, revise, do shadow work, revise these past traumas the best I can. And 12 months from now, have an improved self-concept and a new romantic partner, or in the very least, a new healthy romantic outlook that will inevitably attract a good romantic partner into my life. Everybody that we have worked with in the mastermind is capable of having that, guys. Our expectation, Marvin and my expectation, is that you will have, in the very least, after 12 months of doing this work, the ability to attract a romantic partner, if you don't already have one, within that 12-month time frame. For a lot of you, it will be faster. Okay, but 6 to 12 months is the guideline, is the benchmark we look at for, I now am of the energy, frequency, state, whatever term you want to use, to naturally attract a great partner into my life. If you know our stuff at all, which you all do if you're watching this call, we do not, when we say attract, we don't mean you sit on your fucking ass then. It means I'm now of the state where I can do the appropriate inspired action to meet the right person. And that might mean online dating. That might mean going to places where I'm not completely comfortable socially, but doing it anyway. Because after doing this self-concept work enough, I realize I can do that. And guess what? If you do that, you're going to be incredibly attractive to some people. I'm just telling you that's the case, because people don't do that kind of inner work. Once you've done it, once you get grounded in it, you become quite often the most attractive person in the room. And I don't just mean that romantically, but people will want to talk to you, etc. So that is my end of 2024, beginning of 2025 goal setting speech. Marvin, anything to add? I know you had a good, you've talked about this a lot the last few weeks, but anything to add to that?
I would say just the main thing is understanding this is all about you and not about somebody else. I think a lot of times when we come into this work, we get caught up in trying to get something, whether it's money, job, security, relationship. And it to me, this stuff is so much bigger than that. This stuff is about finding yourself. This stuff is about healing, becoming you. So doing this stuff, I want the result of you doing this stuff to be you get a SP, whether it be old or new. I want that to be the result. But I don't want that to be your main goal. Your main goal, in my opinion, should be to fall in love with yourself. The main goal is to learn how to be happy with or without. That should be your main goal from all of this. And also too, along with Tim saying set goals, I think what's imperative is, I think what's probably even more imperative than setting goals is, I don't know, I could be wrong about this, but I think it's what are you going to do once you get off track? Because everybody sets goals, but nobody stays on track. So I think figuring out what are you going to do that's going to keep you on track, I think that's what's most important. Because we can sit here and try to set these goals
That's
of
why this
whatever.
shit's going to take 6+ months.
Yeah, I
Because of
mean,
that.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so I'm always more concerned with the goals are good, but how are you going to stay consistent? And I think that's something that everybody should think about, because it's pretty much guaranteed. If you want to say it is written, it is written basically that at some point you're going to fall off the horse, or whatever word you want to use. At some point you're going to get sloppy. You're going to let a week go by, 2 weeks go by, a month go by. So I think in those times you got to figure out, what are you going to do? Are you going to work with somebody, that's going to hold you? Maybe you're not going to work with somebody, but then when you start falling off, maybe that's the time you're going to hit somebody up and say, hey, look, I need you to hold me accountable, or whatever the case may be. Or are you going to handle that in a different way? Whatever that way is for you, that depends on you. But goal setting is extremely important. But like I said, figuring out how you're going to stay consistent, that's even more so important to me, because consistency is why pretty much everybody fails, or a lot of people fail at this stuff. Anybody can start. So many people start. I mean, just look at YouTube videos. So many people start. So many people start businesses. What's the stat? I don't remember the stat. It's like something like 90-some% of businesses fail within 5 years, or less, typically less. They don't even make it past the 12-month, 2-year mark. But there's a reason for that. Everybody wants to start, but why does nobody finish? So you got to dig deep and figure out what is going to keep me consistent with this shit. And maybe that is working with somebody and having them hold your hand accountable. Because to me, that's what I see when I see great results, is whenever people are held accountable. There's a reason we grow up and we are held accountable throughout our entire life. There's a reason why adults hold children accountable. If there were no adults, children wouldn't be able to hold themselves accountable from a common sense perspective. Children need adults to say, yo, you got to get up and get dressed to go to school. Because if it wasn't for that, kids wouldn't do it. Right? Most adults need somebody to respond to at work. Because if there was nobody over you, a lot of adults wouldn't get their jobs done properly, or wouldn't even do it right, or show up, or whatever the case may be. Like, no matter how old you are in life, pretty much all of us need to be babysat to some degree. Very few people can move through life, in my opinion, without having somebody necessarily there holding. We think we can, but I mean, just look at, like I said, when you go to work, how many people are actually at work holding your hand? You don't realize it though. You think you're just going there to do a job, but you have a manager or supervisor or whoever else over top of you making sure you're doing your stuff right, or whatever the case may be. So it's not just with this LOA stuff. This is in life. Children need parents telling them what to do. You know, people at their jobs need other adults or whoever supervisors telling them what to do, because we don't know, and we need somebody to hold us accountable with that consistency. People in the weight room, very few people can stay consistent at working out or eating right. That's why I prefer the term lifestyle change. I don't prefer the term diet, or even sometimes using the word goals, because goals implies like once I hit something, I'm going to stop.
Great point.
And when you hit that, to me, you don't want to stop. You want to keep going. Even once you hit your goal, you want to still keep going. So, yeah, I guess that's what I would say. I would add to that too.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think obviously we value coaching and having people holding you accountable. I mean, I can tell you yesterday, for instance, I met with my coach yesterday and I met with my therapist today. And I don't need to do that stuff. I mean, I don't need to. I think a lot of people say you don't need to do that. I want to do that. You should get to that point, I think, in terms of accountability. There's that great saying by the ex-Navy SEAL Jocko Willink, discipline equals freedom. I think that, that when I first heard that, I was like, that's pretty harsh, especially if you're coming from like the LOA space, the soft space that most of us are coming from. But there's some truth to that for sure. And the way, especially if you don't want someone holding you accountable, you have to hold yourself accountable through a routine and through habits that are beneficial to you, right? You have to, this is why Marv and I always talk about establishing a routine that becomes habitual, because that then is at least something holding you accountable, right? If you do not have a routine, it's going to be much harder to hit these goals. For instance, if you have not reached out to your SP within the next couple months, I almost guarantee you it's because you're not doing what you said or what you should be doing, or what we've told you to do. I'm just going to be blunt about it. We've worked with a lot of people who've done what we've told them to do. We've also worked with many people who have not. If you don't, if you don't follow a routine, if you're just kind of like, if you just check in once a week with us, for instance, or whatever, that's off. That's not enough.
No, people that get real results, they check in with us.
You got to check in with yourself every day, or most days at least, and then check. And then have initially, maybe first a group like this, maybe have support like we do now with every week. But once you get your SP, still check in with someone, a coach, a therapist, someone to hold you accountable. Once every couple of weeks or every month or whatever. I mean, that's what I do. I love having people hold my hand. Now, I try to do it as much as I can. I'm getting better at it, because it's helpful. But there's a lot of problems in the SP and manifesting space where that's kind of frowned upon. And all I got to say is the proof is in the pudding, guys, for a lot of this stuff. If we set goals and we honestly, and we don't hit our goal, and we look back and we say, well, I did what I wanted to do to try to get it and you didn't hit it, that's fine. There's no shame in that. But if you look back and say, I really didn't hold myself accountable, I didn't follow a routine, I didn't do what I need, if I'm honest with myself, what I needed to do to hit that goal, well, that's when you gotta.
It's your fault.
It's your fault. I mean, Kue, who was a very gentle soul, he said, I think I made a video about this last week. He basically said, after all I've told you and have talked about and tried to have you do, if you can't get this to work in some way, you have no one to blame but yourself. And he just said it like it is, and that's, especially with LOA, that's what it comes down to. And again, Marv and I aren't talking necessarily about external things. Like if you don't get the SP back, for instance, in my opinion, that's
not your fault.
Right. That's out of your control.
That's not your fault.
What's in your control is how you went about trying to do it, or doing the inner work, how you feel about your self-concept. And that's why we say
a great point.
After 12 months, maybe you don't have your SP, or any SP. But your self-concept should be such that you're okay with that. And you know in the future that there's a very good chance you're going to meet a great partner. That's what we want for everybody. And that's honestly our expectation, because we know everybody who comes into the group is capable of that. We would tell you it's not a good fit if we didn't think that was the case.
That's a great point, Tim. The distinguishment between it being your fault versus not being your fault. When you don't get something on your timeline, that is not your fault.
Right.
I mean,
and that happens
said,
all the time, by the way. You
yeah.
Very successful people where they fail to hit the goal on the timeline externally. No problem. That's fine.
For everybody.
Right.
It doesn't matter who it is. Your favorite YouTuber, it doesn't matter how much money they have. They could have 10 million, 20 million, $100 million. Favorite business person, favorite athlete. A lot of people never hit the mark when they want to hit it. But that does not mean that it is your fault, because there are things out of your control. Like Neville talks about. Neville's said everything has its gestation period. A horse, it takes a year for a horse to be born. It takes a human 9 months to be born. You know, those are different things, different manifestations. You know what I'm saying? And on top of that, you don't want to get your manifestation earlier than you need, because when you get your manifestation earlier than you need, a lot of times, that's when a lot of problems come in. A lot of you guys don't realize you guys are blessed to not get your manifestations when you think you want them. You guys think you want your manifestations at a certain date, but a lot of people,
especially your SP. I mean,
especially your SP. A lot of you guys aren't ready when your SP shows back up. Because like Tim and I would say, now you got to deal with it. And a lot of you guys are like, holy shit, what do I say now? My SP finally showed back up. And that's what you got to be careful of. But that's a great difference that we got to point out, is when it's your fault when you're not doing any work or any routine. That's when it's your fault. When you're not doing any work, any routine, and you're not seeing any movement, just like right now in our stuff and people we worked with in the past, we have somebody right now who's been telling us they're going to reach out to us for a month now and still hasn't done it. And so when you don't get the results and you're like that person, I don't feel a type of way, because you're slow walking yourself and you're slow walking lying to Tim and I. You know what I'm saying? And so that's when stuff becomes your fault. When you keep saying, yeah, I'm going to reach out, and then you don't reach out. That's when it's your fault. But just because the physical manifestation doesn't show up when you think it should, or on time, or whatever the case might be, a lot of times people watch these videos. Like, again, the subliminal video I just did. I saw another subliminal video from the same content creator, and it said, get your SP by Christmas, or get some miracles or whatever by Christmas. What's going to happen is people are going to watch that video, and then when Christmas comes around and shit doesn't happen, they're going to say, oh, I failed.
Right.
No,
they're going to shame themselves. They're
going to shame themselves.
Right.
No, you didn't fail. You did not fail just because it didn't happen around Christmas time. You know what I'm saying? Because you were doing the work. The only time you fail is when you stop doing the work, or when you quit and you say, you know what, I lost. You know, I'm not doing this anymore. It doesn't work. Yeah, that's when you fail. That's when you quit. You know what I'm saying? But if you don't get it by Christmas, that doesn't mean LOA doesn't work. So many people think that, oh, I didn't get it by my deadline, LOA doesn't work. No, LOA works on its own time frame.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, is if you're not honest with yourself, you're not holding yourself accountable. And again, that's the point of coaching, is sometimes even if we are honest with ourselves, we're not as honest as we think. And that's where coaching and stuff can obviously help, or can supplement your honesty and your I guess you could say your routine, your discipline. And you know, something else, I'll just add this to the ends, because I know we're gonna wrap up in a couple minutes, but something to help keep us accountable that's very practical, pragmatic. I'm not talking about this from an LOA standpoint, even though journaling can be very helpful, obviously, from an LOA standpoint for some people, scripting. But a simple journal, it could be on your phone, it could be a written journal, where you just check in, I would say once a day, just note. You can use it however you want, but just something to note how I did today, keeping myself accountable. Whether that's just a scale 1 to 10 of, like, you know, how self-loving I was, or like what I did. Did I do my exercises? If you have a certain technique you do each day, something just to monitor yourself. And then you can also go back and see what days you flubbed up, what days you were doing well. There's quotation marks around that, because, you know, some days you did the work, like we just were discussing, you did everything right, but you don't feel good. And that's okay, because you still did the work, right? And then but you'll start to notice, even if you didn't feel good, you did the work, things turn around. While when you didn't do the work, you start feeling worse a couple days later and you can't get out of it. So I do like some kind of like daily accountable journal or something. It just makes it easier if there's something you can turn to every day, to make it, just easier for you. A more elaborate version of that is something called the success indicator of W. Clement Stone. Um, I have a whole playlist on my YouTube channel. I'll try to link to it. I'll send a link in Telegram too. His is more fun if there's more to it, but the idea of the success indicator was like Benjamin Franklin. I don't know if you guys know the story. Like basically, like he would go through like a virtue that he wanted, like patience, humility, and he would mark himself like I think like 1 to 10 or something every day, and go a whole week focusing just on that. And then, but the point is like you keep yourself accountable by doing that, and it leads to more success. Um, so yeah, a written journal of some kind or accountability thing, I do recommend. In no way required, but if you find you have a hard time keeping yourself accountable, I would utilize something along those lines.